Welcome back. I mean, we haven't done one of these for a while, but the 2023 legislative session starts on Tuesday. So we wanted to get these started, and we'll do these obviously every Friday through the legislative session. Just a couple of cleanup items. Again, for those that are still joining, a copy of the report that we're about to put up on the screen can be found in the chat. So you can pull that down. On that report, you'll see, each bill is linked so that you can just click that and it'll take you directly to the bill. What I use is the Senate's website. The House has a separate website that operates very similarly, but I pull all of this off of the Senate's website, which you can get both House and Senate bills on either site. It's just whichever one you feel works best for you. So anyway, it comes off of there. You can click on those and get to that, get directly to the bill if you're interested in the language of the bill. And maybe if we have time next week or something, for those that are new, I can kind of poke around in that site for just a few minutes and show you the information that's there. But for this morning, the bill filing deadline has not arrived yet. And so bills are still coming in. We probably have, I don't know, a few dozen bills that we have on our list that we're watching or that we have out and have people reviewing them and whatnot. But I'm going to hit the highlights. We have had committee weeks now for a few months, well, since the election, basically. And they got off to a pretty slow start, but it has picked up, and there's a number of bills that are moving. And one bill that's I think is going to be could possibly be a big problem for us. And I'll get to that first here. So Laura, if you could pop that up. Thank you. Okay, these first two bills, House Bill 999 and Senate Bill 266, this just popped up on Wednesday when the Senate bill was filed. And the House bill was filed just a few days before. This is Governor DeSantis's bill that removes diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which I will call DEI from now on, from our public universities. The reason that that's a problem for us is that ABET will meet here in a couple of weeks. And they've had a 2-year pilot program, and they're about to pass language in their criteria for the accreditation of engineering programs around the country, that these programs must include, a DEI component. I've read a little bit. It's kind of vague. I think it leaves it open for the universities to decide exactly what they want to do. But if it's not there, the university is not eligible for accreditation or reaccreditation. Again, our problem is that this is DeSantis's bill. He's been on national news with this. He doesn't care, and he's not going to change it for us. We can certainly ask, but it's not, if we just look at what he did with the Black history and the AP courses, that came up. The College Board blinked, but during the process, DeSantis has said, well, I'm not sure we need the College Board anymore. And so whether you agree with him or not, he means what he says, and he says what he means. So I don't see him backing down. As a matter of fact, this is right up his alley. It's kind of iffy, and we'll discuss this with the CLGR on a call at 10 o'clock this morning in more detail since it's first come up. But this is right up his alley of he's just going to look and say, well, ABET doesn't need to do that because that doesn't have anything to do with engineering. I mean, I'm just saying that's what he's going to say. So that's kind of a pickle. Just to confuse it a little bit more, the motion was made to ABET by ASCE. So, that kind of pulls the engineering group into that, because the way I see out of this, and again, this is just my opinion, there's been no final decisions, is to go to ABET and say, look, Florida's not going to be the only state that does this. Currently, I read this in an article, and this weekend I plan to do some research and find out exactly what they've done, but there's 8 states that have passed what they call similar legislation in the article. I don't know if it goes as far as this one does, but there are 8 states where these laws have already been passed, and there's 25 other states that are looking at passing similar type laws. So Florida is not going to be the only state that this happens to, and it's not just going to be engineering. I would assume that other accreditation boards that maybe do medical or legal law school type stuff, or accredit teachers, or whatever, that they may run into similar circumstances. So this is all developing. I just want this on everybody's radar. And again, we'll talk about it at CLGR later at 10 o'clock. And then actually at noon, I have a call that I'll be on with, I think there were 6 other people from the universities in Florida, from the engineering schools, to discuss this issue as well. And for those that know her, the person that I've gone to, I went to Zana at the Board of Professional Engineers to get their take on it. That led me, to Michelle Roddenberry, Dr. Roddenberry, who's a friend of a lot of ours, and she's very knowledgeable on ABET and how they work and all that kind of stuff. So I'm working with her, and she will actually be joining the CLGR call at 10 o'clock. So that's where we are on that. So let me move to some more mundane issues. One bill we're looking at is the sovereign immunity bill. This came up, I think, as an amendment a couple of years ago, and it would particularly affect the CEIs, and that is under the current sovereign immunity laws. If you sue say a city for something, and you get a $10 million judgment, you're only going to get $200,000 unless you bring a bill to the legislature, and they call them relief bills, and the legislature doesn't pass very many of those. Some in the legislature feel that that's too low, and so they've now in this bill have it set at $5 million. Well, the problem for the CEIs is they're acting as agents for the local government or the state government they may be working for, and so this could impact them and their insurance, and affect them in a lot of different ways. So, excuse me, John and Derek, I've talked with them about this. They know about it. John will be talking to Senator Gruters and make sure that they're aware. Again, I don't think the CEIs would be the only group that acts as an agent of a government when they're working for them, but obviously in our world, it's going to have some impact if this would pass. So we'll see what we can do as far as getting something out. Going back to the report real quick, you'll see if a bill has passed a committee, I give the committee references. If a bill has passed, I just put favorable by and color it red. So in this case, the House bill still has 2 more committees to go, and Laura, the rest of that for the Senate bill is on the next page. Yeah, it hasn't moved over there. So that's good. That's one we're working on. We're not just monitoring that. We want to make sure that they're aware of the impact that this might have, because they may very well be unaware of it. The next couple of bills, and in just a minute, if I get done fast enough, if anybody's got some questions, I'll take those. Otherwise, if you have questions, put them in the chat, please, and we'll either, if it's something we need to get back to you on, we'll email or contact you somehow, or we'll bring them up next week. This next bill, you can see there's more movement on it, 85 and 360. This is what I call the statute of repose bill. It lowers the statute of repose from 10 years to 7 years. It also, puts a different definition on, I guess, on the trigger, the event that occurs that starts the clock on statute of repose. And so now it would be, actually they have about 4 things loaded in. Currently, it's the date the last payment's made, which obviously can be years if you wind up in a lawsuit. So this ties it to the date, several different dates, but they get a certificate of occupancy or temporary certificate of occupancy, or the owner actually takes possession, or some of those, whichever is earliest. So it's a good bill for us. We would like to see that change. We would like to see the trigger become when the final payment is invoiced to the owner, because you do have in the world, you have subs that are on a job, and maybe they're there at the very beginning of the job, and if it's a 5-year project, the clock doesn't start running until the project's done. So they could actually be on the hook for, more than 10 years, could be, 12, 13, 15, on and on, depending on the length of the project and anything at the end there. So, that's something we would like. I don't think it's not going to happen in this bill. The problem with that and trying to get legislators to agree to that is a lot of people look at the statute of repose as a warranty type situation. And so they're looking at it and saying, well, if we did this, then, the sub that did, the slab, and they always look at houses, the sub that did the slab for the house is going to have a shorter statute of repose once the owner takes possession than, the subs and the prime that are there, at the end. So that's kind of what we need to overcome. And we'll talk more about this on CLGR as well. We're looking for, some occurrences out there that have happened, and then the insurability of this for some, because I think it can cause problems for some people, especially where one company is acquiring another. So we need to get that information together and maybe, put together a little different argument on that. But all in all, it's a good bill. We're not against the bill. We're for the bill. It does good things for us. We just, wish it would be a little bit stronger. Okay, the next one. This is just one. There is no House bill at this time. This is Senate Bill 154. For those of you that participated in these meetings last year, you'll remember last year we were all about the bill that was coming, that was based on our recommendations from the Surfside collapse. This is a bill that's come back to try to fix some of the problems, and the problems are not with the recommendations we had made for the inspection program. This is totally about the reserves, and I don't think once during all the meetings that we had when our group put together the recommendations that anybody ever mentioned a reserve study. But there are companies that do these studies for condos, and they go in and they look at the building, they look at everything, and it's a financial report. It's basically coming back to the board and saying, you've got these things, and in the future, you're going to have these things. This is the amount of money that you need to be setting aside. Well, obviously, in the past, up until, this past May or probably July 1st when it was signed, condominium boards around our state had the ability to waive their reserve requirements if they so chose. And so we find ourselves in a situation where about half the condos in the state have no reserves set back. And now the new law that was passed in May requires that they have their reserves fully funded by the end of 2024. And of course, that presents some problems. But we're watching this real close. Anything can happen with this bill. But for now, our position on it is, look, we told you what to do to keep the buildings from falling. We think, that it's a good, what we have is a good start. It needs to go further in that respect. And as a matter of fact, this bill does have a language in there that puts control over this inspection program with the Florida Building Commission, which is another one of our recommendations. So it does move it forward in that. But for the most part, when they're talking about reserves and they're talking about those things, that's a discussion of how you pay for all this. That's not what we do. We're just here to tell you what you need to do if you don't want the buildings to fall. Everybody, the lawyers and the condo associations can argue over the other stuff all day long, but we're there to protect the plan of inspecting these buildings and getting them repaired. So I don't know what'll happen with the House bill. I can just tell you that last year, if you all remember, because we weren't having these calls during the special session, at the end of the session, we thought this bill was going to pass, and then it didn't. And it ended up passing in a special session in May. The holdup coming through the regular session was the House, and it was the person in charge of the House, Representative Perez, in charge of the bill in the House. He was simply saying, look, we've already got an inspection program in Miami-Dade. For me, it needs to be more. And so he added in a lot of the requirements now for the reserves, which obviously is an important part of this. And so that's kind of the angle he's taken. So I'm not exactly sure. I know John and Derek and I talked about this the other day that next time we talk to him, let's not make a special trip, but next time we talk to him, let's see kind of where he's at on this, because the last I heard, he wasn't really willing to do much. So I don't know if this bill will actually get very far or not. It'll pass the Senate, but where it goes from there at this point is kind of unclear. So, but we'll keep on top of that. The next one we have is transportation bill. This bill is gonna, if it doesn't altogether drop off our report right now, it's going to be at the very end. This was more important to us a couple of weeks ago because it contained language that gave FDOT the authority to do what we were calling at the time and what the bill called progressive design build. And that's been taken out of these bills, and it will be part of the budget package that comes for FDOT, which those bills haven't been released yet. So that's where that's going. That took a lot of it out. They also took out something we kind of shook our head at, but we weren't going to fight it. But they took out the part that limited the amount of money that could come from the transportation fund annually, or a percentage for transit projects. So that's been taken out as well. And so there's still some things in this bill. It does have the sharings of savings if the designer contract, somebody comes up with an idea during the project that saves money. The engineer or the designer will participate in that, or could participate in that, and get a portion of those savings, and as would the road builders. And then I think FDOT would get the other half. So that's good. So it may not totally drop off our list here. We may keep an eye on it, but for now, I think this one has more drop to a monitor status. And then finally, one that just, I think I remember back in my days when I represented commercial general contractors and was a member of and even chaired the Construction Coalition Committee up here in Tallahassee. I can remember this comes up every few years, and the engineers are always against it. So I'll run it by CLGR, but we've already kind of told the legislators involved and others that we'd just rather not see this pass. But having said that, they took out the most important part, and I'm talking about the fire sprinkler bills. The contractors are always trying to get, it's a scope of work issue. They're always trying to, be able to do some of the things that engineers do now. Their argument being, we put these in the buildings, we know how to design them, which may or may not be true. But what this bill was doing was increasing the number of heads. And so what we said was, and we've said in the past, if you're just moving a head of a sprinkler, you're putting in a wall or taking out a wall or whatever, that's not a big deal. Where it becomes a big deal is when you're adding heads to the system and you're affecting the pressures and this, that, and the other. So that part has already been taken out of at least the House bill in that first committee stop that you see there. And I don't think I'd go back and check, but I'm pretty sure it never appeared in the first place in the Senate bill. So there are other groups. There's two fire sprinkler associations. One has said they're not going to support this if the engineers don't support it. And the state fire marshal's office has said, well, when asked, they just said, well, where are the engineers on it? And so I think us saying we'd just rather not see it pass probably will doom this bill, but we never take that for granted. We'll keep an eye on it for those in our group that do that kind of work. So I see we still have about 9 more minutes here. For those that might be new at 9 o'clock, there's a different call. Maybe we should combine these two so Jeff can just step in, but we'll talk about that offline. But Jeff Littlejohn, who handles our environmental stuff for us, will do a presentation on that. Anybody that joined this call to hear about the rule that's coming out of DEP, that was published on Friday, Jeff will take that up in the next half hour. And there have been movements on that bill. I was on a call yesterday with home builders and the developers and associated industries and a number of other groups who are rising in opposition to this rule. So there's a number of steps that they still have to go through to get this bill ratified. And I think the long story short is we're going to be standing in the way at each one of those stops if we can't get it on the first one. So our goal is not just to kill the thing outright. It's to delay it for a year. This isn't ready. The reduction in the nutrient loads for nitrogen and phosphorus, that they're requiring are far too high. And there's other problems with it as well. But so it just needs, as they say, it needs to bake a little longer. So that's really our goal. And we've been working with DEP to try to come to some resolution on this. But Jeff will take that up in detail in the next call. So I've got a few minutes. Ladies, do y'all see anybody with their hand raised?
Well, Peter and Pete made a point in the chat about sovereign immunity and the bill that we need to make sure that our ability to insure and the cost to insure stay the same if our clients that we indemnify have a bigger target.
Yeah, I sent that out to my insurance broker just to make sure she speaks with her counsel and the underwriters, just to make sure that there's not additional exposure and then therefore additional cost for us.
Peter, you see that backfiring with the DOT though, with the whole issue that the CEIs are, under the sovereign immunity clause or protection of the state currently. If they change, would this change that for us also?
I'm sure it would, but I always knew, isn't there an issue where it only covers the prime and it doesn't cover the subs?
Yeah.
So, anyone who's a sub is already exposed to this.
Oh yeah.
So and I don't know if there's anyone who's only a prime, and if you are, good for you, but you could probably afford it. So, there is an issue, but it also fixes a disparity that I know has been going on in DOT CEI for a long time.
Hopefully.
All right.
That's all we've got, Alan.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll give you a few minutes of your life back, as Peter Moore likes to say. For those that are interested, the next call starts at 9. Again, you do have to get off and get onto a different call, but Jeff will go through all the water resource issues, which there are a number of, in addition to the rule that DEP is pushing right now. So I thank you very much, and we'll see you next week at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.